now I'm selling in 9 of Amazon's marketplaces, US and 8 internationals.
So it
Yes.
sounds like you decided just to try out Canada
Hmm.
and, see how it was, and then started having some success there. And
Hmm.
so, and then now you're selling, on 9 different Amazon international platforms. So from everything that you've learned now, let's imagine someone's doing pretty well on Amazon US. At what
Hmm.
point does it make sense for them to even consider the time and effort and hassle of going international? Like, should they be doing at least 100 grand a year in sales, or 1 million, or do you have any sort of tips for when it even makes sense?
That's a very good question, and I think it depends for certain people. So I'll just use myself. So Canada, in order to register for their sales tax that they call GST, you're required to. It shouldn't be in order to. You're required to register if you have at least 30,000 Canadian dollars, which is about 23,000 US dollars in sales worldwide, not just in Canada. So at the time, I was still relatively new. Like I said earlier, I just had the one SKU, and I didn't hit that threshold mark yet. So I was like launching into Canada with very low sales. And I know a lot of people say you shouldn't go international until like you're a 7-figure seller or something like that. But like to me, like you're just compounding time, because over time you have, the more you can get a return on your time, the better. So it makes the snowball grow faster is the way I look at it. And so people can start relatively early. Um, it's kind of like one of those things, you got to make sure it's not a shiny object, but oftentimes, people start like trying to run traffic to their Shopify store early on, and that's a whole different skill set. And I don't want to dismiss, other channels, but the nice thing about Amazon is if you're starting to get traction on Amazon, selling in an international marketplace like Canada is relatively easy. I don't know the exact statistic, but 75 to 90%, I've read estimates anywhere in there, but 75 to 90% of people in Canada live within 100 miles of the US border. Most of them, especially on Amazon.ca, speak English. The culture is very similar to here. So if it sells here, chances are it's going to sell there, especially if similar products are already selling.
Gotcha. So let's say you go launch on Amazon in Canada, for
Hmm.
example, because that's English and probably one of the easiest to
Hmm.
start. So one thing that comes to mind is, how do you build? I'm guessing that you still need reviews and you need that initial boost of traffic and sales. And so, that can be, a challenge for people. We've talked with a lot of clients they're
Hmm.
worried about that. So how do you get those initial traffic, sales, and reviews, if you don't know anyone in Canada?
No, great question. So what I would say, one of the things to think about is Canada, for example, it's about 10%. For me, it's a little higher of my US sales I see in Canada, but anecdotally, people, I think even Amazon quotes this number 10%. A lot of sellers say it's around 10%, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, but you can use 10% as a baseline. So that means, and also there's 10% of the population roughly in Canada that there is in the US. So there's also going to be 10% of the traffic, 10% of the people, um, like reviews theoretically. And the nice thing is you don't start over from scratch. So the way it works is if you're starting, let's say you have 20 reviews on your product and you go into Canada, you'll have those 20 reviews. Now, I've seen it both ways on the search page, where if you type in garlic press and you're selling a garlic press, that your garlic press will show your 20 reviews from Amazon.com. Sometimes I see it where it won't show any. And then on the next page, you'll start off with, it'll say your 20 reviews on the listing page. You pretty much always see it on the product detail page. Now, what happens is once you get a review in Canada or whatever marketplace, then that review takes precedence. But this is more my opinion. I think people are just used to, because there are not a lot of reviews on products in general in Canada relative to what there would be in the US. So I think they're used to, and this is a nice thing that happens in every marketplace. People can scroll down to the reviews. It'll always give, not always, Amazon's always testing things, but for the most part, you're going to see the local reviews have precedence in the review section. And then underneath it, customers on Amazon.com also said, and then it'll show reviews from the US. So the nice thing is you don't start over completely from scratch when you go into Canada with reviews. So they're already kind of there. In fact, sometimes people get like, oh, I have 300 reviews on my product. And then all of a sudden they have one review showing because they got one in Canada. But either way, I think it's less of a focus there. And another thing is international marketplaces tend to be an afterthought for people, and there's less competition. People aren't doing as much there. So, you know, I know you had started selling stuff in like 2014, which was a whole different world than it is today. It's almost like in a lot of ways, the international marketplaces are like 2014 or whatever, with just the tactics. Like you pretty much can just throw up a product, turn on PPC and go, and then get some residual sales.
If you are interested in growing your business on Amazon, please reach out to us at turnkeyproductmanagement.com/apply. Thank you for listening. Subscribe, leave us a review. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the other side.